By 1914, Albert Einstein's marriage was a wreck. He was in Berlin with his new love, his first cousin Elsa. His wife Mileva was back in Zurich with their 2 sons. The divorce 5 years later was brutal. But Mileva made a demand that was unheard of. She didn't just want support, she wanted the ultimate intellectual property settlement. She wanted the Nobel Prize, or more specifically, the cash that came with it. But why he agreed is more revolutionary than his theories. The other genius. To understand that high-stakes deal, you have to go back to the beginning. Zurich, 1896. The prestigious Zurich Polytechnic Institute. This is where Europe's brightest minds came to solve the universe's biggest problems. At the turn of the 20th century, physics was in a state of crisis. The old Newtonian model of the universe was breaking down. Scientists were wrestling with baffling new concepts like electromagnetism and the nature of light. They were hunting for a mysterious, invisible substance they called the luminiferous ether, which they believed filled the universe. Into this world of scientific revolution walked 2 students. One was a messy-haired 17-year-old named Albert Einstein. The other was the only woman in their entire advanced physics class, Mileva Marić. In an era when women were mostly arranging family outings, Mileva was arranging classroom math equations. She wasn't just present, she was brilliant. Born in Serbia, she had to fight every step of the way for her education. She was the first girl ever to attend high school physics classes in her country. While others saw a quiet woman with a limp, Einstein saw an intellectual equal, a mind that could keep up with his own rebellious thoughts about space and time. They fell in love over equations and coffee. Their letters weren't just filled with romance, they were filled with physics, with phrases like our work, our research, and our paper. In 1901, Albert wrote to her, buzzing with excitement, "How happy and proud I will be when we 2 together will have brought our work on relative motion to a victorious conclusion." This wasn't just a supportive girlfriend, this was a collaborator. But their partnership in Mileva's career was about to hit a wall. The family and the secret. Their relationship was a source of intense conflict, especially for Albert's family. His mother, Pauline, was fiercely opposed to Mileva. She saw a Serbian woman who was 4 years older than her son, an intellectual and not Jewish. In a letter, Albert recounted a horrifying fight with his mother, who cried, "She will be the death of you. She is a book like you, but you ought to have a wife." Pauline called Mileva an old witch and did everything she could to break them up. But their bond was sealed by a secret. In 1901, Mileva became pregnant. A child born out of wedlock was a social and professional catastrophe. It could have ended Albert's hopes of getting a respectable job. So in 1902, their daughter Lieserl was born in secret in Serbia. Albert, focused on his career in Switzerland, never saw his firstborn child. Mileva was left to handle the crisis alone. The baby's fate remains a heartbreaking mystery. She likely either died of scarlet fever or was quietly given up for adoption. The personal toll on Mileva was immense. She had been one of the brightest students at one of the world's best universities. Now reeling from a difficult pregnancy, childbirth, and the loss of her child, she failed her final exams for a second time. Her academic career was over. They married in 1903, but a fundamental shift had occurred. They were no longer 2 equals chasing a shared dream. Albert was the physicist. Mileva was now just the physicist's wife. The miracle year. And yet behind the scenes, the work continued. As Mileva raised their 2 sons, Hans Albert and Eduard, she was also his sounding board, his editor, his hidden partner. She managed the household, freeing Albert to focus entirely on his thoughts. A family friend, Mileva Marić, recalled visiting them. "We often found her and Albert studying together under the same lamp. The 2 of them were one stone." Then came 1905, the Annus Mirabilis, or Miracle Year. In a single year, Albert Einstein published 4 groundbreaking papers that shattered the foundations of physics and changed the world. He explained the photoelectric effect, which became the basis for quantum theory. He proved the existence of atoms by analyzing Brownian motion. He created the theory of special relativity, and he unveiled the most famous equation in history, E equals mc squared all, under one name, Albert Einstein. The world was introduced to a lone genius, but for years, historians have debated the central mystery of that year. How did a 26-year-old patent clerk working in isolation manage to revolutionize all of physics in a few months? The letters and anecdotes point to a possible answer. He wasn't working in isolation at all. He had a partner. But how lone was he really? The breakdown fame changed everything. As Albert's star ascended, his marriage descended into a black hole. His cruelty became just as sharp as his intellect. By 1912, he had begun a secret affair with his first cousin, Elsa Löwenthal. When Mileva found out, the marriage was effectively over. He sent Mileva a list of cold, cruel demands for her to follow if she wanted him to remain living with them for the sake of appearances. A set of rules for their life not together. A. You will see to it that my clothes and laundry are kept in good order. B. You will serve me my 3 meals regularly in my room. And the most cutting, you will not expect any intimacy from me. You will stop talking to me if I request it. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a prison sentence. In 1914, he moved to Berlin and started a new life with his mistress, Elsa. Mileva was sent back to Zurich with the boys, effectively exiled. For 5 years, they lived apart. A family fractured by fame and infidelity. Albert was now a global celebrity, celebrated for his brilliant mind. Mileva was a single mother, raising 2 children, one of whom, Eduard, was beginning to show signs of serious mental illness. Her own scientific dreams were now a distant memory. But Mileva Marić was not a victim. She was a strategist. And when Albert finally demanded a divorce in 1919, she knew exactly what her contribution to his success was worth. It's an impossible position that forces us to ask, at what point does supporting a partner's dream become the sacrifice of your own? I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. She was about to make the deal of a lifetime. The bet divorce negotiations are about money, but Albert Einstein in 1919 had very little. He was famous, but his university salary was modest, and post-war Germany was on the brink of hyperinflation, making the currency nearly worthless. He couldn't offer a traditional settlement, so he offered something audacious, something almost insane, a bet on his own future genius. The deal was placed into the official divorce decree, a legally binding contract. If and when Albert won the Nobel Prize, all the prize money would go to Mileva. Think about this gamble. This was 3 years before he actually won. He was confident, but a Nobel is never guaranteed. He was betting his greatest future accomplishment against his freedom, and Mileva accepted. Why? Because no one on earth knew the value of his work better than she did. She had been there in the beginning. She had checked the math. She had debated the theories. She knew the Nobel was not a matter of if, but when. In the chaos of post-war Europe, the promise of a future prize, paid in stable Swedish Kronor, was a brilliant financial move. She couldn't get her name on the papers, but she could get her name on the prize money. It was the ultimate acknowledgement of her hidden role, a final, binding settlement for their work. The payday in 1922, the telegram arrived. Albert Einstein had been awarded the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics. The prize money was 121,572 Swedish Kronor. In today's money, that's well over $1 million. And true to the deal, Albert transferred the funds to Mileva. She didn't spend it on luxuries. She invested it. Like the brilliant, practical mind she always was, Mileva became a landlord. She bought 3 apartment buildings in Zurich, a city with a stable economy. She secured her future and the future of her sons. And it was a good thing she did. The money became a lifeline for a family tragedy. Their younger son, Eduard, a gifted musician and medical student, suffered a severe mental breakdown. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Mileva took care of her, Tete, as she called him, lovingly. But his condition required intensive medical intervention. He was institutionalized for periods at the prestigious Zurich Psychiatric Clinic in Zurich, and the cost of his care was enormous. The Nobel money, the reward for theories about the universe, was used to manage the harsh realities of a crumbling mind. Mileva was eventually forced to sell 2 of the buildings, one by one, to cover the mounting medical bills. The prize money, which some argue she earned scientifically, was ultimately spent not in a comfortable retirement, but in a mother's desperate, all-consuming fight for her son's well-being. The legacy Mileva's final years were a struggle. The financial strain of Eduard's illness was relentless. Eventually, she was forced to sell the 3rd and final building, her own home, to Albert just to stay afloat. He held the ownership while she continued to live there. On August 4, 1948, Mileva Marić died in a Zurich clinic at the age of 72, having outlived her fortune. She was buried in an unmarked grave. She left behind no money, no property, and no scientific estate. For decades, her story was reduced to a footnote. The debate over her contributions continues. Was she a co-author, a muse, a brilliant sounding board? The historical record is murky, but the divorce decree is not. It is a legally binding testament that Albert himself valued her contributions so highly, he signed away a future fortune to settle the account. It proves that behind the myth of the lone genius, there is always a more complex story, a story of partnership, of sacrifice, and of secrets. Mileva Marić never got the public credit she may have deserved, but she got the money. And in doing so, she wrote a final, surprising chapter in the story of the 20th century's greatest mind. But the impact of their miracle year had one more surprising twist. While the theory of relativity reshaped the cosmos, another of their 1905 papers, one explaining the random, jiggling motion of particles called Brownian motion, would reshape our world in a completely different way. The mathematical formulas used to describe that randomness became the foundation for modern financial models, the ghosts in the machine of Wall Street. But while Einstein's work was shaping the abstract world of high finance, another unsung hero was building a financial fortress in the real world, battling the Great Depression and Jim Crow to create a legacy of his own. His name was C. Spalding. To learn how he built